Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at the Project Casting Podcast, Episode 1. I'm Jonathan Brown, and today I am fortunate, lucky, and honored to be here with K-Soul. Thank you so much, K-Soul. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. I'm humbled by the experience being next to someone that's, I think, a great singer. You know, your neo-soul sound is like a breath of fresh air in the entertainment and music industry. To me, I'm tired of listening to a lot of the same songs that all sound the same. So I'm really excited to dig in and, get to know you and shine a spotlight as, you are Project Casting, I would say, power user with one of the best profiles, which is why we contacted you on our platform. So I'm really excited to get to know you and learn a little bit more about you and your experiences.
Man, I'm looking forward to sharing. Really honored that you invited me here to talk to you today.
No problem. So let's just get started. Tell me a little bit about yourself. What brought you to music, TV, and film?
Wow. Well, for me, music has been something that's pretty much been the fabric of my life since I was a small child. I grew up with my grandparents, and my grandmother was very religious. We went to church every Sunday. And my favorite part of church was the choir. It was something about just hearing them sing and, get filled with what we would say the spirit. It just moved me in a way, and it seemed to, calm some of those anxieties and things that you may go through even as a child. So I think that's where it birthed in me that love of music.
That's pretty amazing. Like, I grew up in New York, and I grew up in like Catholic churches, and the music there, it's a little bit inspiring, but it's nothing like, I would say, like Baptist music or like Southern music. And my wife, her grandfather was a Baptist preacher. And my first time going there, it was such an amazing experience when you hear that music and you feel the choir. It's just, they say the Holy Spirit gets you. I really believe that. And it's something that with my 3 daughters, it's something that I always think about, like maybe, she'll like joining the choir. Maybe that'll bring the appreciation for music, and so that she likes things more than just Taylor Swift. You grew up in Chicago and raised by your grandparents. What was that like? I think about cold when I think about Chicago, and I think about Chief Keef. What was your experiences in Chicago?
Well, it was definitely cold. I grew up in a bungalow house, a 3-bedroom house, basement, on the corner of the block. So, I was kind of cool with the kids on my block. Plus, I could hang out with all the kids on the next block. There was a corner store at the end of the block that we would all walk to probably multiple times a day. Because, back then stuff was like you could get a whole bag of just junk for like $1 and you thought you were rich. So it was, it was definitely that city life, kids walking to school, kids taking the bus. There was violence, there was a time when there was heavy drugs, heavy gang violence. I've experienced having to hide on the side of the bed, to make sure that, concerned about bullets coming through the house. So it was a mix. It was the bitter and the sweet of inner city life.
That's so interesting. I grew up in Harlem in like the 80s and 90s, and I'll never forget there was this guy. I don't know. I used to call him Smokey because he was always smoking. But he was always in the front porch, and you had to go through him every day. And like he basically ran the entire neighborhood. Like all the young kids, when you turn like 12 or 13, joined Smokey and his, I don't want to call it like a gang, but like his infrastructure for lack of a better part. And, I can't say that I can relate 100% to your experience, but I could definitely understand what you're saying. Like, growing up in inner city is different than growing up in certain parts of the suburbs. And bullets, crime, and all those things. I don't think people really understand how impactful that can have on your life. And I think when you're young, you just take it in stride. But when you look back on it, you're like, well, how did I get through that? Do you feel as though your experiences in Chicago had an impact with your music or some of the song choices that you choose or the lyrics that you write?
I think absolutely for me, I started writing poetry, and sometimes the poetry I would write would be about the environment, the sounds, because to me it was also about sounds. They would paint a picture. You ever have that song come on and you instantly are wherever you were at the time when that song impacted you. And that's how those city sounds were for me. And it became a part of me, which is a part of my music. So I think that's why with my music, you get the sweet, but you also get that edge. And I also rap because, there's that hip hop part of me that's rooted in that inner city life.
I know you said that some of your influences were like Stevie Wonder and Whitney Houston. It was like a mixture of neo soul with a New Jack swing. How do these different or diverse influences come together in your songwriting and your performance style? When you think about other artists, what do you use as like, hey, I like what they're doing, I'm going to try something similar to that? Or do you just ignore other artists and go independently? What is your creative process like?
I think it's a little bit of both. I believe early on, there was definitely more of the influence present because I hadn't quite developed my own sound or figured out, like you said, what do I like from this era and what do I like about that? And I think as I've grown as an artist, but also as a person and just understanding what I want to sound like, I like harmonies and I'm not a big belter or things like that, but I'm more of a harmony and I like soft melody. So, you learn the things that you like and kind of pull, like I love that Stevie did this that way, so maybe I'll incorporate a little riff that sounds something similar to that, but put my spin on it.
I think to be a singer is so talented. Like just to think about when I think about musicians, right? And they have to play like the piano. They have to know like a middle C and then D, E, F. But to do that with your voice I think it's pretty amazing. And then I'll also think that'll probably be a little bit stressful on your voice. You ever have to like take like teas, or I even heard like some singers when they're on tour, they have to even do shots so that like their vocal cords are clear. What is your like creative process and routine for like maintaining your voice when you're singing, or how do you prepare when you know you're going to sing that day or that week?
Very particular about that. Heavy on the rest, a tired body. You sing with your whole body. I believe that. So I'm very heavy on the rest. I follow a 3-day rule, 3 days before the show. I'm really not doing any unnecessary speaking that I don't have to. Even in rehearsals, you may do rehearsals a little lighter. I definitely have my tea and honey concoctions that I like to have. And really just taking care of myself overall. I eat light and things like that because you want to be the best when you're on stage.
My heart goes out to you. I know it's not easy. I cannot imagine to perform with your voice on stage in front of people. I think the last time I did anything musical, I did the Backstreet Boys when I was in 4th grade. It's tearing up my heart. I still know the dance moves, but I'll spare you. But even then I was nervous. I wasn't even singing. I was jumping up and down with some of my friends. But yeah, my heart goes out to you. As you're going through this process, being an up and coming singer, there's definitely challenges. Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you faced and how did you overcome them as becoming a singer? Like if you were to talk to, a little girl out there who's like wanting to become a singer, what would you share with her that you wish you knew at that age?
I think one of the biggest things for me was lack of confidence, self-doubt. When you grow up without your parents, it can create feelings of abandonment, rejection, and they kind of carry throughout. And then, once I made it known that this is something that I wanted to pursue seriously, everybody doesn't believe. They don't like how you sing. They don't like how you look. They don't like how you write, and if you already have those feelings, that coupled with that, I really had to do a lot of soul searching to find that inner strength to push forward in what I believe and still believe that God has given me purpose to do. So what I would tell a young lady is that if what she feels to do, whatever that may be, she feels that that is something that her heart is leading her towards, that is what brings her joy, don't let the opinions of others stop you from moving forward. Follow that, continue that, grow that, nurture that, and know that the right people, the right times, the right circumstances, they will come when it's time. You just continue to prepare yourself and push forward.
That's really impactful. I think that's pretty tough, probably growing out without your parents, and what you're saying about, self-doubt and lack of confidence. And, for me, I can't directly relate, but one thing that I've been trying to do for me, kind of relate with what you're saying, is I've been trying to do like positive thoughts, right? Like you get into a habit, in my opinion, where you have negative thoughts continue to bring like negative thoughts, right? Like today's going to be a bad day. Oh, I tripped. See, it's a bad day. And then continue to build on that. But then to think about like, well, today I woke up today, right? I can walk today. I can breathe today. And once you have that positive affirmation for yourself that I am loved, I am cared, and I am special. And if you tell yourself that, I think that's the first step of like building that self-confidence. And I think what you said is really, really impactful. And I think it's really important. I think more should be done. I know it's a little bit trite and commonplace for people to say, hey, focus on mental health, but I think more should be talked about. And I'm glad that you took some time with us and share with the audience, your experiences about building that, or going through that self-conscious kind of, or self-confidence kind of process. Right. But I think you transitioned, you made great improvements. You were a model in Avenue, Lane Bryant. I loved your song. I'm definitely throwing it in the bio. You definitely guys need to check it out after this. But talk to me about becoming a model. Like, hey, you grew up without your parents. You had that self-doubt, but then you transitioned and built up, that positivity, that courage, that confidence to do modeling. Tell me a little bit about that. How did you get into that, or what was that experience like? I know our audience would love to know how to become a model. I'll let you take the floor. How did that go?
It was always something that I wanted to do. I never always saw models who were fuller figured, even as a teenage girl. So there was like that deterrent there. But then, as I got older, that community became a little more prevalent. There became more opportunities. And there was actually a local designer in Chicago, To Be Continued Jeans. And she was looking for some girls to model her jeans, kind of starting like in some local fashion shows and online. And I went out for it, and it started from there. I started doing fashion shows. That led me to meet like other designers at fashion shows, to work with them. That brought more confidence. I got more pictures. I started submitting, and it kind of just started being like one thing after the other. And one day I was just in the Avenue store, and a young lady was like, "Oh, we're having an in-store show, and we would love for you to come back and model." And so I ended up doing a couple of their like in-store fashion shows while people were in there shopping, modeling the clothes for them. So it was just like the networking of it all, and it really just fell into place for me. I'm grateful.
That's awesome. Just to clarify, you're here in Atlanta, correct?
Yes. Now.
Awesome. I think Atlanta is growing in so many ways. I know it's up and down with the TV and film industry, but what made you choose Atlanta? I know you grew up in Chicago. Walk us through, what led you to move to Atlanta?
I had been coming back and forth, as you know, Atlanta's kind of considered like that Black Hollywood vibe. And I had been coming back and forth, making some connections. And I started working with a local label out here, One Nation Under God Records, when I put out my 2020 album, In My Mind. And they were able to then get me some shows out in Atlanta and, just some opportunities. And the conversation was had like, maybe, this is what you need to consider next to kind of open the door a little more and broaden your horizons. And I admit I was looking for a change. I was working on a new album. It was kind of right after COVID. I was tired of the cold. And so, yeah, we finally decided to make it official.
That's pretty awesome. I know Atlanta Fashion Week, if you haven't heard, is growing, and I try to do my best to promote Atlanta as much as I can. And they just had FUBU and walk on their Fashion Week, and I thought that was pretty interesting. Like FUBU's making a comeback. If you're an aspiring model, check out Atlanta Fashion Week. You can sign up in model registration, and fashion designers will look you up and actually contact you to potentially model in their fashion show. But going back to FUBU, I remember I wanted the FUBU jersey so bad. Like I would have fought somebody for it. And I remember like I went to I went to Burlington Coat Factory and I found the shiniest FUBU jersey, but long time ago. Do you think FUBU can make a comeback? I'd love to know your thoughts.
Oh man, I used to love me some FUBU too. I don't know. I think people would if they came out. I wouldn't mind rocking some FUBU again.
Right. Shameless plug. If you wanna sponsor us, I'll wear it. we'll wear it. That's so awesome. So you did modeling. You've been singing. How did you find a label? Like I think our biggest question that we get is, how do I get an agent? How do I get a manager? How do I get signed? Can you walk us through the process that you went through to find this label and shout them out if you'd like again, and tell people, if I want to become a singer, what should I do? What should I look for? And what do I need in order to get discovered?
What I would tell any artist looking to get any type of representation is you can't cut corners. You need to show that you have invested in yourself, in your online presence, your photos, your music, if your artist, your paintings, whatever that portfolio looks like, you need to show that you've invested so that it looks professional, because that's what a lot of casting agents, managers, they're looking for, that level of professionalism and polish. Yes, they can help you to take the next level, but you have to show them that there's something there for them to be invested in. I was able to connect with One Nation Under God Records, actually through a friend of mine in Chicago who just was supportive and I know this person in Georgia, they work with artists. And it initially started off as more of a consulting arrangement. They were just looking to help artists distribute and put out your project, and they had major distribution. And then once I put my project out and it did well and they saw, some of the traction and things like that, we decided to go into more of a label partnership agreement. So that's kind of how that, but it took years to just even get to that point. And a lot of it was having to kind of show and prove, like doing shows, showing consistency in that area, showing that I was willing to travel and be out and network. And so a lot of it is really being able to show that you are willing to do that legwork, because it's not all social media. You really have to get out here and let people meet you and see your face.
I definitely believe that. And two parts to that. On the business side, I'm the CEO of Project Casting, and I've been doing it for over a decade. It's interesting because we've had investors come in, and I remember talking to one investor, and he was like, "Yeah, I really love what you're doing, and it's so exciting, and blah blah blah." And when you secure funding with us, we're going to hit the ground running. 90% of your time moving forward is going to be travel. And that really shocked me. Like in his belief that in order for your business to really take off, that you had to be on the ground, hitting the ground, running all of the time. It was like conventions, shows, meetings, all of the time. And it's interesting that that still kind of translates into music, right? Like, I think we assume kind of like The Weeknd, right? Where he just pops up with an album, but I'm pretty sure 90% of the time he's out there networking. His manager's out there putting him up in events, parties, getting his name out there so that people know who he is. Considering where he came from, being a homeless kid, to putting out probably one of the best, in my opinion, mixtapes at that time with no promotion. But I really resonate with what you're saying. The second thing that I thought was interesting and how it relates to TV and film is we did a survey a long time ago, and I was trying to find the exact numbers, but they asked casting directors what matters when casting talent. Casting directors said the number of followers you had mattered more than acting talent. But so then that was a big backlash. Like, why is that? Why does the number of followers matter in determining whether or not this actor can do it? And I think it's two parts. And I think it resonates with what you're saying. One, this actor is committed to the craft and is promoting themselves on social media, promoting themselves publicly, building up that audience so that people know and recognize them, so that they know when that person shows up on set, this person's a hard worker because they look on social media. Hey, he posts every day. It's consistent in everything that they do. Secondly, they're looking producers. The TV and film industry is a business, and producers are looking for a return on their investment, right? So I think the same thing applies for a record label, right? Like if I advance you $100,000, that's an investment that I want to make 10, 20 times back. So are you going to give me the return on investment? Are you the type of person that's going to commit to doing something and showing up and being successful? So yeah, I think that's interesting. And maybe the main idea is hard work is what counts, and hard work pays off. So continue to work hard out there if you're thinking about joining and becoming music or joining the acting industry. But let's talk about some of your songs. Like one of the songs that I really liked, and I talked about it right before we jumped on this, was Bad Connection. I really like that song. I'm going to highlight it in the bio. Talk to me about Bad Connection. What was your writing process like? What was it like in the studio? Did you have to sage the studio before you got started? Tell me a little bit about Bad Connection, because honestly, that was my favorite song.
Okay, so Bad Connection is a song off of my EP called Connections. It was the follow-up EP to my album In My Mind. And what I wanted to do was, In My Mind was about that mental, going through those mental things and different things and how they affect us. And in continuing that conversation, I wanted to talk about connections and the connections we have with ourselves, with others, and how that ties into the mental health. And so Bad Connection starts the project because it ends with a strong connection, right? But those bad connections, whether it's people, whether it's habits, whether it's traumas that perhaps we need to let go of and heal, that was the space of Bad Connection. And I wrote it from the perspective of a relationship that's gone bad. And now there's this disconnect, and it just doesn't feel good. And that's kind of where that song came from.
I really liked it. It was the neo soul part of me, but I really like that song. I know people are always wondering, how do you get your music on Spotify? And I know it's pretty easy on YouTube, but Spotify is not that simple. Maybe walk us through the process on how you got your songs on Spotify, because I know people would love to know how to do it.
Well, before I had because I have major distribution now. My music is distributed through Universal. Wow. Prior to that, I was going through TuneCore. And now, of course, these platforms, they have advanced. So usually if you set up with the TuneCore or DistroKid, they will be able to get you onto Spotify. The big thing with Spotify is don't buy streams. Don't fake the funk, because they're taking people's music down left and right. And that's probably
Really?
what artists are experiencing, not being able to either get their songs up there or keep them up there, because they've really cracked down on that. So you can get on there. Some people have trouble staying on there because of fake streams.
Really? Is that really that popular? If you're an artist, do you get like emails, hey, I'll get you 100,000 streams, or I'll add you to my playlist if you pay me 10 grand. Like, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I didn't know that was happening on Spotify, taking down streams.
Listen, that in connection with, just to kind of go back to what you were saying about followers, it's a big thing, because there are literally places you can go to buy all of these things. And Spotify, of course, has started to really crack down because, one, as an artist, and yes, it is hard. I get it. It's hard when you put your heart and soul and you look on there and like 10 people have listened to your songs, but it's worth it to continue to grow it naturally, because, when you start with those bots and things like that, it doesn't put the song where it could really go, because then it's like artificial. Nobody knows, somebody's got 1,000 streams in Turkey. Like, no, you probably don't have fans in Turkey right now, but it's a big thing. And the same with followers. So I guess sometimes I get a little, irritated about that part of the industry on both sides, because they will ask that question. Oh, well, how many followers? Or you got to have this many followers. And I feel like that just doesn't really give the full picture of how well you may be doing as an artist, because there's so many metrics, and those are metrics that can be manipulated.
I agree. When you look at like content creators or UGC or user generated content creators, which is growing now, sometimes it's better to have a micro influencer. So someone that has like 1,000 fans or 10,000 fans, because their fans are loyal. Like every time they post, 100 likes because they have an engaged audience, versus, paying $1 million for a Instagram story from an A-list celebrity that lasts 24 hours. Yeah, but how many of those people are actually caring about that creator, or are they following them for different purposes? I remember there was one content creator, she was trying to sell a product, but then she was trying to sell women's clothing, but then 90% of her followers were men, right? So she built up this audience, but the audience that she was trying to sell to, she couldn't relate with. And I think you bring up a good point. Vanity metrics are vanity metrics, right? You want something that shows, hey, my audience listens, and because I have 10,000 streams or 10,000 followers, 10,000 people are going to show up at my show, right? That is what matters. And I like that you brought that up. It also reminds me of what Drake in like the Kendrick Lamar situation, right? Where he's suing him for inflating the numbers for the Not Like Us song. Like, I'm surprised. This is a whole big business in the background that I have no idea about. Like, and then how are A-list artists like not getting taken down, but then the smaller artists are? I think that's pretty interesting or crazy. Like, I don't even know how to navigate that.
It's one of those things, unfortunately, the machine, that's a real thing, especially within the industry. And that's where majors benefit from. They have all of those tools at their aid, and, it may still be in that same vein, but it's not believable for an indie artist. It's not believable that we're getting hundreds of thousands of streams, but it's believable for Drake. So it flies under the radar, if you understand what I'm saying.
And I know one thing that people probably don't know, and it relates not just in music, but also in TV and film, is that when you see like a major actor, 90% of the time, their talent agent, their agency is financing to make that actor a star. Right. So you see an A-list actor or an actor that comes out of nowhere, is in all these big movies, come to find out that they have a production company, or their talent agent is a producer on the side, and it has a production company and is financing a large percentage of this movie in order to keep that talent successful. So a lot of people are like, well, how do I become an actor? Or how do I become A-list? Well, it's just like music. These agencies and management companies are financing and building you up so that you become more famous, and then they make more money off the movie. And it's finding people that are willing to invest in you in that sense. But it's very interesting. You think of A-listers or top actors and you think, oh, wow, everybody likes them. But it's more than that. It's a talent agency financing, promoting, buying streams, maybe, and making them famous, right? And I think that's a little bit what that Drake lawsuit points out. And I think that's a little bit of what we're seeing, that growing from aspiring to like successful to ultra famous is not a straight path. And it's not just making music and getting people to like you. It's a lot more than just clicking off check boxes. And I think that's interesting now in this climate with technology, which leads me to my next point, AI, right? BBL Drizzy, I really like that song. I'm sorry. When I heard that, I thought that was like, what? This is the coolest thing I ever heard. But it really is a little bit shocking, right? Like, you could just type in some words and then you can have a song. Like, what are your thoughts as a singer where an app may be able to replace what you can do? How do you feel about AI and what it means for the industry? And do you embrace it, or do you say, hey, no, go against it? I'd love to know your thoughts on AI and music.
I'm definitely a music advocate. I stood up for that for the Recording Academy this year, for Music Advocacy Day, against the No Fakes Act. Well, for the No Fakes Act, I should say, which is the act that says that we don't want AI, because songwriting is an emotional thing. It's a personal thing. And, you know, if that's what people want to do to create, then I think they need to be transparent, and there needs to be a clear difference between that and the people that are really in the studio writing out their lives with pen and paper. You know, because if that's the case, then what happens to the songwriters? Do we turn into, you know, like the AI now at the drive-through, where you don't even communicate with a person and they're spitting your order back to you? Like, that's not, that to me, that takes away the very essence of music. It's supposed to be a connection from one heart to the next. If there's no heart, then what are we really doing?
I think in the future, there's no stopping AI. I think it's a train that is going and it's not going to stop. But what I think is really going to be valuable is personal experiences, right? If I can go to an app, or I have a robot or whatever, and they know exactly what to say, they know exactly what to play, I think people are going to start searching for mistakes. They're going to start searching for authenticity. They're going to start searching for personalized experiences. That's where I think concerts are going to become more and more expensive, because you can't replicate a concert with AI. As much as you put on those Google glasses, nothing's like bumping into somebody or singing the song next to somebody that you never met before, but you have that same connection of like, hey, we both really like this artist. We really like this song. So I definitely agree with you. Yes, AI is probably going to change music, and as soon as you wake up, there will be songs. But I think that authenticity that you talk about, that personal experience, relating in ways that a computer cannot, is something that cannot be replaced. And I think that will continue to grow as things change. Speaking of in-person events, you know, Super Bowl, Kendrick Lamar, Not Like Us. I was sitting with my kids and watching the game, and I was like, is he going to do it? He's tricking us. He said some people like to sue. Oh, is he going to do it? I don't know. But then he did it. What are your thoughts on the Kendrick Lamar? Are you a Kendrick Lamar fan? Like, what was your thoughts and takes on the Super Bowl performance?
I loved it. Listen, I loved it. I'm a K Dot fan all the ways. His poetic justice, he's someone I would love to collaborate with. Kendrick, let's do something. Um, no, but I think if you have been a fan of his music, you were not surprised. I expected him to definitely give a message. What he did with Sam Jackson, I thought that was the icing on the cake. Yeah, I think you knew what to expect. I didn't expect anything less. I thought he was going to do Not Like Us. I mean, he just won 5 Grammys for it. Why wouldn't he? Like,
right.
So I wasn't surprised, and I can, I see why people are upset, but listen, the truth is what it is. And he laid it out.
Now, this may be a hot take, and maybe it's my personal opinion. I think the songs were too new, right? Like, he just came out with the album. My kids are looking at me like, what song is this? I've never heard of it. And I was struggling to mouth out the lyrics and sing it at the same time. So I think that's my only hot take. Other than that, the performance, amazing. Seeing Sam Jackson out there and having that with Kendrick Lamar, you always have like that double entendre, triple entendre. What does he mean? Is it on face value? Then you have the Twitter detectives look it up, and genius.com is telling you all these things that you didn't know. Oh, he wore bell bottoms that touched the floor, which signifies Harriet Tubman. I don't know. But I think that was fantastic. The only thing I could switch, maybe some a little bit more popular songs, but other than that, I thought that was pretty great. That Not Like Us, I think that was tough. And I think it's going to be really tough as an artist, to transition out of, like, Drake. How do you transition out of this? Like, and then at what point is it too far, right? Like, does Kendrick Lamar stop at this point? Does he prove the point that there is no big three, there's just big me? Does he stop, or does he just continue to push the envelope? When is the right time to stop? What are your thoughts?
I did not expect as much emphasis on the beef per se that was kind of sprinkled throughout. I do think that he stops at this point. I mean, Kendrick is a great artist. He's been a great artist even before this record. He has so much more than just this record. I just don't want him to get too tied into just what this record has meant, because it's his greatness that even positioned him to be in the conversation to begin with. He's about to go on tour. I think he focuses on that, and he focuses on pushing his new album. And as far as Drake, I think Drake has to go back to like his Take Care days. I think he has to like come out of all of this popular music stuff and just give us, straight emotional Drake that we all love when he was doing Marvin's Room. I think he has to like come back in that vein and kind of remind people what they loved about him from the beginning.
I could see that. I could relate to that. I think my favorite Drake album, if I were to say, it was the Nothing Was the Same, where it's like the blue and the clouds. Like, honestly, that's my favorite. Tuscan Leather always gets me in the mood. It's a great album. We don't know what it's like in the entertainment industry and music industry at that point. Maybe it's like, hey, people try and look down on you because you're not tough enough, right? Who knows? But Serena Williams, to Crip Walk, right? I thought that was pretty good. Like, I had to do a double take. I had to look it up. I had to even go on Twitter to make sure that it was Serena Williams. But people were saying it's controversial, right? Like, she used to date Drake, and then she's Crip walking with him, and then she used to grow up in LA and all these different things. Like, what do you think? Do you think that it was that controversial, or are people just making a big deal out of nothing?
Oh my goodness. Look, I love Serena, okay? Like, but I will say, now, first of all, it was dope that she Crip walked. Like, I was like you, I was like, was that Serena? And I had to kind of get on social media and confirm. But I do not think it's a coincidence that her and Drake have history. And then and yes, I know she says it's related to the Olympics, and I get that, but I think there's just a little bit of get back in there, which, okay, that's fine. It is what it is, but it was cool to me. I think people are kind of like gassing it up a little more than it need be.
Yeah, anything for those likes and clicks, right? Mm-hmm. What's interesting, though? Like, many years ago, I worked on this Lifetime show, and Serena Williams was like a guest star on the show. And it was lunch break, and it was so interesting because she's a tennis star Like for real, when you see her in person, she's not a little person. She's strong and I was intimidated. I'm not a small guy, but I was very intimidated by that. But she had somebody like saying, "Hey, this is what you need to eat. This is on your diet. This is stuff that you can have." And seeing that showed me like every single day, like the level of commitment to a sport. It's not a 1-day thing. It's not a 2-day thing. It's every single day being committed to doing something. And that's what makes stars and athletes, right? I think, didn't she win the Wimbledon while being pregnant? I can't even get out of bed if I have a headache. So my heart goes out to her and what that did. Moving on, the Oscars. How do you feel about the Oscars, right? I think there should be a best background actor category. It's hard to be a background actor. Somebody should do Oscars. Was it Oscars? It was Oscars so white. Oscars no extras. There should be a campaign for that. Are you a big fan of the Oscars? You check them out, or what do you think about the Oscars?
I do. I'm one of those people that kind of watch all the award shows. I like to see what's current, just what the industry is talking about, what they're celebrating. It may have been some actors or actresses I hadn't heard of, or movies, just kind of, it just gives me an idea of like the climate and, what's going on. I think you have to take it with a grain of salt. We know a lot of these things, as much as we would like for them to be solely about talent, there's a lot of politics involved. So every year, nobody's ever going to be 100% satisfied with what takes place.
Yeah. And I always wonder about like best actor. It's like a gift and a curse, right? Like you've achieved, I would think, almost like the pinnacle of acclaim, right? All the Hollywood adores you and your acting performance. But then kind of like, where do you go from there? Like Monique, she won an Academy Award, and you would think more roles would have come to her, or I believe Jennifer Lawrence, if I'm not mistaken, won an Academy Award. And again, more awards or more shows or more movies would be on that way. But you kind of see like a little bit of drop off. Do you think that once you reach that level, it's kind of hard to maintain it? Are you more selective about your projects? What do you think if you reach the pinnacle of success, would you take time off? Would you work harder? What do you think about, let's say, reaching the pinnacle of success? Where do you go from there?
I think it starts with, what your definition of that looks like. Is it winning a best actress, or let's say an album of the year, or, is it that? Or is it, the other parts of how you grow in life? And if you started a family and, or you did that passion project, I think for me, it is always about moving the narrative forward to give a testimony of my life to share with others, and I don't know that a certain award or accolade will be the final thing that says, okay, you're done doing that. I think that it continues to morph and change and can look different, where you are, the once basketball star that now becomes the coach that takes his players to those same levels. You know what I mean? So I think I'm the type of person that I'm always looking to evolve and change. So if I'm now have won that album of the year award, how can I help other young artists get there? Or now I can run off and do all the Broadway that I also would like to do. So, it would be kind of something like that.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like priorities change, but your internal motivation or the main reason why you do what you do continues, even when you reach the pinnacle, right? I always think about people that are like ultra wealthy, like the billionaires, multi-billionaires. And it's like when you have all of that money, you can buy anything, you can do anything, and you can do anything to excess, right? You can go all the way into whatever you're interested. How do you find motivation to do that or not do that or help or not? I always find that interesting. Like, how do you manage success when you've achieved it? Or maybe you never feel like you've actually achieved success. Most people, minus nepotism, you start from the bottom. And an interesting story popped up, and it was recently on Deadline. And it was talking about Atlanta-based casting directors on a podcast were saying that they only watch 4 seconds of an audition. All right. And I'm going to read a little bit from it because I think this is pretty controversial. I think it's pretty interesting, like how much time and effort you put in, like you were saying, as an artist to make music or even audition for a TV show. It takes time, takes effort, takes resources. And then that person who's choosing you is only getting 4 seconds. So reading from Deadline, a recent tape conversation between 2 Atlanta casting directors, one of whom admits to devoting only 4 seconds to watching self-tapes, has renewed fears among actors who believe their auditions are not being taken seriously. On a recent filmed installment of the Act Up podcast that was shared on Instagram, Raven Drummer, shout out to Raven Drummer, big casting director for Tyler Perry, who promotes on her website that she has cast over 15 series, 18 feature films, and 7 touring plays for Tyler Perry Studios, laughs as she hears fellow casting director Tiffany Roche admit to giving very little time to audition tapes. Quote, I'm dead serious, Roche, who credits include BET's limited series Zatima, telling Drummer, does it take 8 seconds to figure out if it's a man or a woman? Does it take 10 seconds to figure out if it's an Amazon driver or a surgeon? No. When someone shows up as they are, they show up as they are. That's the human process. So when I come across a tape and they are what they are from second one, from beginning, yeah, they're in character. They're telling the story. That's what I'm hiring them to do. I'm not waiting to figure out they can convince me if they can do the job. What are your thoughts on that?
That I don't know about that. Like, what can you really tell in 4 seconds? I mean, I get the whole people are showing up as they are, but to me, any role that you're preparing for and you're presenting, like, there's usually like some character build, some emotion that has to build and come into it. So I don't know that 4 seconds is a fair time frame to assess someone's talent level for a particular role. That seems a little short.
And then is it talent, right? If I'm looking at you for 4 seconds, it's like I'm judging you on your looks. And then if your looks qualify, then you're on to the next stage. And I think there's some merit to that. The big difference is 20 years ago, auditions were in person. You drive to the LA office, casting director sitting there, producer, director, and they're looking at you and then they're making the decision. Now with technology, casting directors are getting flooded with thousands of submission tapes. I think one audition we posted on Project Casting had over 1,000 auditions in 12 hours, if not more than that a couple of years ago. And I could understand that's a lot of time. And if you had 1,000 auditions and you spend a minute on each audition, then you would be overwhelmed. But I think the delivery to say that I'm only going to determine whether or not you are worthy in 4 seconds is a little bit callous. And I may get a little pushback from that, but I think that it speaks volumes that if someone's willing to take out the time and resources to interview, more attention should be, or more credit should be given. And maybe there's something wrong with the technology itself, whereby, or the system itself, whereby a casting director is getting 1,000, 10,000 submissions. Maybe there should be, I don't know, AI or some kind of a tool that says, hey, this person doesn't match the demographics of what we're looking for, so we should not see this type of submission, right? So I think that would help ease the casting director's burden or workload, while also putting the best candidate forward and giving them the attention that they deserve and need, and I think require when you're doing it. One thing that I've always struggled with being in the entertainment industry or working on Project Casting is what makes acting different than any other job, right? Like, if I were to apply for Publix, shout out to Publix and the chicken tender sandwich, best sandwich ever. If I were to apply at Publix and I walked in and they said, no, right, just looking at me, right? Like I would assume that's a lawsuit, right? I would assume that's against the law. But in some parts of entertainment or some parts in areas, you can do that, right? Like you can say, you don't fit the look and we're not looking for that, and immediately cast you aside. So for me, that's the thing that I always struggle with entertainment is what makes entertainment different, and how do they get away with it? Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're probably going to tell me to cut this part out, but to be honest with you, it's a big platform that I feel and something that I really connect with. Like, why? I think more respect should be given to actors. I think more attention should be celebrated for these artists because so many artists are struggling trying to make it. And I think that more kudos should be given. So I agree with you there. We're going to talk about something. Again, I'm pretty sure producers are going to say, hey, you went too far here. Diddy fires back on this lawsuit, right? The entertainment industry, again, is open to all these different kinds of things. And Diddy went back on this documentary and he said things that were there are a lie, right? We're not going to touch on Diddy and, that court case is coming up in May and maybe we'll do a deep dive then. But as someone that's up and coming and growing into the industry, what should you look out for? How do you know if someone is a scam? How do you determine like, hey, this project is worth my time and I'm going to be compensated and treated appropriately for this project? What are your tips and tricks on making sure projects are not scams, or how do you avoid getting scammed in the entertainment industry? Not saying that Diddy did that, but if we look at the entertainment industry, how would you protect yourself?
Well, I think first of all, definitely tapping into that spiritual discernment. However you need to look at that gut feeling, that thing that just gives you the heebie-jeebies, whatever it may be for you. Listen to that. Listen to that. Go with that each time, every time. So that's my number one. If something just feels off, I'm good. I'm not going to sit around for a lot of explanation because I trust that's a guidance in another direction. I think you also have to look at the professionalism of things. Real professional business, industry, acting, whatever it is, the emails are going to be a certain way. A lot of people have their own website, so those are going to be, the inline of the email. There's going to be steps, complete sentences. I know people have gotten those emails where it's like, oh, you're so wonderful. And then the words are misspelled or whatever it may be. So that's always something I look for, as well as, people asking for money. You really have to be mindful of that, especially when you really get into a point where you're being paid. If you're starting to be paid for things, you don't go backwards. Don't just be willing to pay for stuff because you can pay for it doesn't mean that it's anything that's really going to benefit you or get you to that next level. So those are things that I look for, and I try to really work on relationships and referrals and do your research. Research. The internet is vast. For as much as people like to use it for bad, you can use it for good. Research. Find out who it is you're talking to, what the company is, what they're about, who else they work with, what's out there. There are all type of pages that will give you reports on scammers or stuff other artists may be saying about their experience. Look into those things. True opportunities don't rush you.
That's good. True opportunities don't rush you. I like that. One thing that I think that's straight to the point. Great advice. One scam that I think is really important to point out, and I see it time and time again. Hey, big project. I would love for you to audition. You've been hired. I'm going to wire you a check for $5,000. You're going to take that check and then you're going to give me back $4,000, right? That's a big scam. If if someone's saying that they need to put a check in your account and then withdraw from your account that money and send it back to them, that is a scam. That's a scam. Don't do that. Scam artists are really good about that. It's really hard once a wire transfer has been done to get your money back, unless you have a pretty big bank account. So it's very difficult for things like that to happen. Like it's very easy for something like that to happen. And you have to do your best to protect yourself. Hopping on what you said as well, do your research. If this company only has an Instagram page and doesn't have a business website or a business license, red flag, right? I know social media is really cool nowadays, but just because someone has 100,000 followers on TikTok does not mean that they are legitimate. That's definitely for sure. And like you said, ask for referrals. What are other people saying? What are the success rate that they have? And I think the best opportunities come from networking. One of the things that I really worked on when I was building out Project Casting was a messaging feature. And that messaging feature, the goal was, hey, I see somebody that I think I can connect with and has great opportunities or have done really well. Let me message them and see what they've done and connect that way. And I wanted to build the platform that allowed that to happen. So yeah, I definitely agree with you on there. K-Soul, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for bearing with me on our first podcast. As we wrap up, I'm going to do two things. The first part is I want to talk about, what do you think people are sleeping on? What do you think people are missing? What do you think people should know? TV, film, news, the floor is yours. What do you think people are missing and they should know?
Oh gosh. First of all, and listen, I just have to stay true to form. It's a spiritual warfare out here. Like, please don't be confused. Do not believe everything that you see, everything that you hear, everything that you read. Be diligent in gaining knowledge for yourself. There is an agenda, even within the industry, music and entertainment, there's an agenda to, I think, push sometimes negative representations of us as African-American people. And I think that we have to be mindful of that, and we have to be making sure that even in whatever we're consuming on social media, our music, that we really try to support what's pushing us forward as a culture, those things that are positive, those things that are uplifting us, so that we can help change some of the narratives. Because as long as we're willing to feed into that, those narratives will still be prevalent. So that would be what I would say, kind of like at the end of School Days when Spike Lee said, "Wake up."
Yeah. I think that's very powerful. Like at the end of the day, America is all about business and everyone's trying to make money. So there's always an agenda to be pushed and so forth. I will say I haven't spent the time just yet, but I do find the 50 Cent and Big Meech situation really interesting. I think I'm sleeping on that. Maybe it's against what you just said. Don't feed into that negativity. But I don't know how you make a TV show and then decide, hey,
yeah,
Sneech. Anyways, where can people find you?
You can find me on my website, www.ksoulmusic.com. I'm very active on my Instagram at ksoulmusic. That's pretty much my handle across all social media. I'm also K-Soul on all music platforms. So wherever you're listening to your tunes, you can get me on there, Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, all of that.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, K-Soul. I really do appreciate it. I will be jamming to Bad Connections on all week. When you see those numbers come up, they are not fake streams. They are me and definitely the Project Casting audience as well. Everyone, thank you so much for attending. This is Project Casting Spotlight, where we want to shine and put a spotlight on you as an artist. If you're interested in participating in this podcast, feel free to send us an email, DM us, and we'll definitely reach out to you. Big note though, you need to have a great profile like K-Soul. Hers is complete and amazing. K-Soul, it was a pleasure meeting you. It was a pleasure getting to know you. I think, hopefully we meet again. Maybe we schedule something next year. You keep us updated on how things are going. When you're on tour with Kendrick Lamar and Serena's dancing in the background, don't forget about us. And, just thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And I think the audience will as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.